This Wednesday, Americans all across the country will gather to honor all those who fought for freedom and thank them for a debt that we can never fully repay. Whenever freedom is threatened, our brave men and women of America have answered the call. In honor of Veterans Day on Wednesday, I'll take a moment to recognize an amazing Illinois veteran, part of what we call the greatest generation. It's December 7th, 1941. As FDR said just a few steps away from us in the House chamber, a day that will live in infamy. The Imperial Japanese forces launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. It also happened to be the 22nd birthday of Tony Gargano, and it was the day that he decided he would enlist in the United States Navy. Tony was assigned to a ship disguised as a merchant marine vessel. He and his shipmates didn't wear Navy uniforms or carry IDs, and their ship had no guns. In November of 1942, a German ship, also disguised as a merchant vessel, sank the ship that Tony was on. Tony survived and was taken as a prisoner aboard the German ship. Then he was turned over to the Japanese, where he spent the next 3 years as a prisoner working in a coal mine. Every day he'd come out of the mine covered head to toe with coal dust. In those 3 years, Tony never had a chance for a shower, never even could wash his hands. 3 years. And he worked more than 10 hours a day on less than 8 ounces of water, 6 ounces of spoiled rice. Here's how he described this experience. Quote, "They torture you, they beat the hell out of us, you'd try to get up and they'd beat you back to the ground, you prayed to God that they would kill you." By the time the war was over and the Red Cross arrived, Tony couldn't believe that he was still alive. After arriving in the United States, they quarantined him for weeks, couldn't even call his family to tell him he was alive, but he made it, and he came home. Now fast forward 70 years. Tony's 95 years old, and he marvels at his good fortune. After the war, he came home and married Julia Elliott, the love of his life. They worked 6 days a week. He was maitre d' at Elliott's Pine Log Restaurant in Skokie, Illinois. He watched his son and daughter grow up, enjoyed the arrival of 5 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. What a life. Last month, Tony Gargano came to Washington with the honor flight. He visited the White House and the World War II Memorial, and he shared his story with the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. They asked him, "What do you think of when you look back in your life?" And here's what Tony said. "Everything turned out pretty good. I met a nice young lady. We got married and spent 60 beautiful years together. I have no complaints." Isn't that an amazing statement for a man who served 3 years as a prisoner of war and was nearly killed in the effort? The joys of Tony's life have outshined the horrors of that war. If you ask Tony if he's a hero, he says there were others who had it much worse. The people we should honor are the ones where the white crosses are. Those are the real heroes. Tony's right, but Tony's a hero too. Tony Gargano faced an unspeakable evil with grace and courage and determination. He lived his life with love in his heart, and it makes him, even to this day, a true American hero. It's the service and sacrifice of people like Tony that we'll honor on Wednesday. But not just Wednesday. We should honor him every day. Too often our service members return home only to find themselves facing a myriad of challenges: physical, mental wounds of war, struggling to find work, education, and a home. We can't simply commemorate their service, wave our flags, march in their parade, and forget them. We have to ensure that our veterans and their families have access to the best: healthcare, education, jobs, and housing. I've been committed to this effort, and I have one program I'm particularly proud to have been part of. It's called the VA Caregivers Program. It provides the families of severely disabled Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans the support they need to keep their veterans home with their families. Thousands of veterans and their caregivers in Illinois and nationwide participate. It's a big, successful program. I recently introduced legislation to expand it so that it covers all veterans. We know veterans face unnecessary delays in claims, processing, and reimbursement, and I've worked hard to cut down on that backlog. I've also tried to make our VA hospitals and medical centers in Illinois and across the country the best. It's the new method of medical service being provided to our veterans, and it has to be the best. I've been proud to sponsor bills to strengthen post-traumatic stress disorder for veterans and their families, as well as improve orthotics and prosthetics research and education. I've been proud to help veterans get homes and jobs. For example, just this year, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs awarded more than $674,000 in grants to assist homeless veterans in my state through a tenant-based voucher program. Let me say a word, Mr. President, about a program that I visited just this last week in Chicago, which is an extraordinary program. This is a program called Rags of Honor. Rags of Honor. It was created by my friend Matt Doyle. He wanted to do something to create jobs, good-paying jobs for homeless veterans. And so he decided to make T-shirts, print T-shirts. And he'd just hire homeless veterans to do it. Well, it's on its third year now, and my friend has basically underwritten it. But the fact is, it's a success. These men and women who were living in their cars or living on the street now have good-paying jobs making T-shirts. T-shirts made by homeless veterans, all American product, all American made, and they're selling them. And people are buying them. Northwestern University decided that they would turn to them and have them do the T-shirts for some of their needs at the university. I used them in my campaign, Rags of Honor T-shirts. It's an example of what can be done to help our veterans, just by one man who was willing to dedicate a big part of his life to do it. There's so many more like it. I'd like to thank all those who've risked and given, even those families of those who've given their lives for this nation, and for the wounds they've suffered, the sacrifices they've made, and the freedoms we enjoy that they secured. We remember and honor the service of every American veteran, not only at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, but every day of the year. Because even though service members and veterans like Tony Gargano may shy away from being labeled as heroes, they are truly the most deserving of that honor.